Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. Let's see if we can start this off right, man. First of all,
the ABCs of CK.
Let me pause that. First of all, we know there's a lot going on in the sport of boxing right now. But let's see if we can start this off right.
The problem uppercut by Crawford, you heard?
Crawford is hurt.
Crawford's hurt now after a Gamboa shot.
Gamboa kept throwing those bombs and one landed.
Yep. Now we'll see if Crawford has yet another asset. How can he recover? Because he took a whale of a shot from Gamboa. The problem uppercut by Crawford, you heard?
Crawford is hurt.
Crawford's hurt now after a Gamboa shot.
Gamboa kept throwing those bombs and one landed.
Yep. Now we'll see if Crawford has yet another asset. How can he recover? Because he took a whale of a shot from Gamboa.
Now, for those of you who are watching this clip, especially if you happen to be a Crawford fan, right? Listen, I like Crawford and Spence. But the argument that I've been hearing lately, now that there are the rumors that Earl Spence and Crawford not only have a venue, the T-Mobile Arena out there in Las Vegas, where they're going to be fighting on July 29th, word on the street is they've agreed and the deal is done. Take it with a grain of salt. When anybody come back to my comments talking about Hood Champion, you didn't know what you were talking about. Look, all I can do is give you and report on the stuff that I find out here on the internet and Twitter, which is the most toxic place on the social media planet. So that's why I say take it with a grain of salt. But I don't think it's fair to say, oh, Gamboa, he clipped Terrence Crawford, so Earl Spence is going to tranquilize him. For anybody who's saying that, I've got to say, and I mean this, in the most respectful way, and I kindly request that you'll hold your horses and not take it to the stupid. Now let's understand something here. Terrence Crawford fighting at 135, 140, and them days are over, man. Since this man has been at 147, what kind of trouble has he really been into? Okay. Conversely, let's say, what kind of trouble has he put his opponents in? That's the real discussion. All right? So when you look at it like that, I don't think there's much to discuss because Terrence Crawford has been able to give people the business. But at the end of the day, Crawford and Spence agreed to that undisputed showdown. And I'm so glad that it looks like it's going to be happening. And I don't care what anyone says. I don't understand why people are being so negative. I understand if you get some frustrated people who are like, man, hey, what's up, young elder? He says, I finally caught you on live. What's up, bro? Nothing much, man. Just out here, man, plugging along. Probably do a little hour, 2 hour, maybe a 2 hour live. And then, you know where I'm going. I'm going jogging. But what I don't understand, why are people being so negative? You know what I'm saying? About Earl Spence and Terrence Crawford finally agreeing to fight. I hear people saying, oh, they're both past their prime. No one cares anymore. Man, knock it off. Someone has to care because these guys are both getting paid guaranteed, getting 8-figure guarantees. But what I will tell you is this, man. Once these guys once it was announced that they had a location, had a date, and now that it seems to be official, you got Al Haymon, who's advising Spence. Then this guy, Ish Henson, is a name that came up with Crawford having an advisor. Terrence Crawford coming out here doing interviews. Earl Spence doing interviews saying he and Crawford are talking every 2 weeks. They talk about boxing, talk about family life. They're talking about, as far as the contracts and what they would like to see. And these two kind of took the bull by the horns, and they went out there and they resolved a lot of those open-ended issues that I'm going to call them the greedy bellies, right? Not just Tyson Fury's a greedy belly. All these greedy bellies behind the scenes weren't able to do. And they deserve to be commended for actually making this fight happen, because I truly believe it's Crawford and Spence that had a whole lot to do with it. But that being said, Crawford was able to defend his belt against Evanesian. Now, some people, when we talk about that Evanesian fight, even myself, when I watched it, I felt like, is Crawford slowing a bit? Because Evanesian hit Crawford with some shots, to me, he should have never been hit with. And if Earl Spence is the touch Terrence Crawford, I think Crawford may respond a little differently than how he did to Evanesian's punches. But then I did have somebody point something out to me and said, hey, Crawford and Evanesian, right? Crawford wasn't in there trying to necessarily get Evanesian out there early. It was basically a glorified sparring match. And Crawford was just enjoying himself. And when they said that, I said, okay, it makes sense. Because once Crawford went into the phone booth and turned into Southpaw Man, and he came out, he immediately ended the fight and tranquilized Evanesian. Okay? Young Elder says, should have happened years ago. Would have been a better fight and assessment on who's the best, but glad it's happening nonetheless. Right, there are a lot of people who agree with you on that. They feel it should have happened years ago. And that's the thing, right? I just talked about Crawford fighting Evanesian and how, for me, looked like maybe he had slowed just a bit because he got hit with some shots by Evanesian that he shouldn't. But this ties into exactly what you're saying, Elder. You say you're rooting for Terrence Crawford, but because of his age, Spence should be the favorite. I hear you on that. But this ties into what you were saying. Years ago, right, these fights kind of lose the suspense, the unknown, because when you have a guy like Crawford who's steamrolling through his opponents, Earl Spence steamrolling through his opponents, and they meet, right? Talking about timing, right? It's all about timing. But when they meet, you don't know what's going to happen. But then you allow 5 years to go by, and they decide they want to make it happen. But during that time, hey, what's up, Chinchilla? Right. But what's happened is 5 years has gone by now, and you've seen Earl Spence, no matter what anyone says, he was in tough with Sean Porter. He got hurt in the fight with Ugas. You've seen Crawford get in there in his most recent fight and not necessarily look like the Crawford we've grown to love and perform the way we expected, although he did tranquilize Evanesian. But that's the thing. So now they're coming together to fight. It's just like this year we could get Wilder and Anthony Joshua. But we're still in the same position where it's like, okay, yay, we get the fight. Hooray. But we don't have that enthusiasm because that whole thing of the suspense, the unknown on who's going to win. Can someone be damaged? We know they can be damaged. We've seen Wilder and AJ lose. You know what I mean? We've seen them get stopped in fights. So we want to watch it, yeah, but no one's breaking their neck to buy a ticket. You know what I'm saying? No one is sitting here ringing the phone of their friends out here, showing extreme passion to create content and talk about it. Because we already know that they're human, And I think with Crawford and Spence, there was a time we saw both of those guys as, being aliens, not being human, being guys who possibly their only kryptonite would be against each other. But it's not like that. So, yeah, I understand with these guys not being in their primes. But I will say this. They're not totally beyond it. You know what I'm saying? Not quite yet, because we do know with sports medicine and the way these guys, it's the way Crawford takes care of himself outside the ring. Although he's going on, I think he's 36. He's not a 36 with a lot of wear and tear on him. So I still think we get a good fight. But I knew this fight was going to take place when the WBO ordered for Crawford to fight Alexis Rocha, who was the #1 contender. And when that went to it was supposed to go to purse bid and all this other stuff. And when that went quiet and they didn't strip Crawford, and the whole thing with Spence, Spence ain't been in the ring in over a damn year. I said, something's going on. There's something going on behind the scenes. So the fact that Spence wasn't forced to fight Thurman, we all knew there was something up when Mauricio the Nose Suleiman was out here talking about Earl Spence is going to fight Keith Thurman at 154 pounds, but not for any titles. Although Keith Thurman is the mandatory to Earl Spence at 147. None of that made sense. The truck driver gave me, I really appreciate your feedback, man. Thank you so much, man. Thank you. I try to just be fair, try to be respectful. I'm not biased. You're not going to get a lot of that stuff you find on some of these other channels, people attacking each other. That's not my style. So thank you so much for the feedback. But we knew something was going on when Mauricio the Nose Suleiman wouldn't make Spence and Thurman at 147. We knew, I said, this man, you've never seen anything like that. So what I think it was just throwing stuff out there to kind of quell all the commotion, you know what I'm saying? All the backlash and fallout as a result of Spence and Crawford not being made, and the fact that the 147-pound division been in a holding pattern for over a year. I said, these guys are just throwing things at us, just trying to out little fires before the entire boxing community totally turns their back on Spence and Crawford, which a lot of people say they did. But at the end of the day, to see it come together, I said, wow, that's what's been going on. Now, I do have a question. I'm going to be honest with you, okay? And I'm going to get to this in a second, is the money. But my thing is, when it comes to Spence, who hasn't fought since he knocked out Yugis, right? And the whole thing we talked about him and Thurman's supposed to fight, I'm wondering just what it was that Crawford did or said, or that his new advisor, Ish Henson, right? What was it that they were able to do or bring to the table this time for negotiations that helped move the needle? That's my question. Forget the fact that these guys are fighting and they got T-Mobile Arena July 29th. That's all great. That's what we want. There's nothing to talk about anymore. The fight's happening. Yay. The real question is, what's going on with this fight purse? That's the real question for me anyway. We know when the promoters were involved, managers were involved, the networks, cable companies, it just seemed like it was impossible for Spence and Crawford and for that fight to get made. Because I talked about the greedy bellies behind the scenes, those key decision makers. Spence and Crawford get on the phone, and all of a sudden, they agree on an undisclosed purse split. Hey, let me tell y'all something. For Crawford and Spence to agree, something big had to happen with that fight purse. Now, I'm going to tell you this. We know Terrence Crawford, when he came to Earl Spence last year, he said, look, I have some investors. Bottom line, without giving you the whole story, there was supposed to be $25 million apiece on the table for Crawford and Spence to fight. That $25 million was a flat fee. And let me tell you something. And Crawford was saying, hey, we don't need to have everybody involved, managers, promoters, just something you and I can sit here, man, and deal with these people. But Al Haymon and, PBC, they weren't going for that. They wanted to know where the money's coming from. Crawford wasn't really disclosing where the money was coming from. But I truly believe that money was Saudi money. I believe that was Skills Challenge Promotion, Prince Khalid, Amir Abdallah. I believe they're the ones that were putting up that flat rate, $25 million for Spence and Crawford. Truck Driver Gamer says, Crawford, in my opinion, dog walk Spence. I respect Terrence Crawford because he's his own boss. You know what? I'm going to talk about that, but since you mentioned it, I'm going to get back to this money thing here. I think Crawford, in every fight, Crawford shows versatility. And the Errol Spence fights, he doesn't show as much versatility because maybe he doesn't have to, because he's such a wrecking machine coming forward behind that jab, throwing that left, getting guys on the ropes, using his elbows to pin them on the ropes, and then banging with the free hand. And the amazing body work and that freakish conditioning that he has. Errol Spence is, let me tell you something. Errol Spence, if all he had was conditioning and decent power and nothing else, Errol Spence would still win fights. Because the conditioning it has so much to do with, you see these guys, once they get beyond round 6 or 7, that's when that conditioning kicks in. And if you have decent power, decent chin, but freakish conditioning, you're going to see guys win fights who normally wouldn't win fights, because it's like I say, the best fighter isn't the person who's going to win. It's the fighter who boxes the best. So as far as Crawford dog walking Spence, with his versatility, if Spence isn't able to do something different than just come forward and basically be a wrecking machine, he could struggle, because I think Crawford's strength, he has many, but the number one strength for me when it comes to Terrence Crawford is his eyes. And some people are like, what do you mean eyes? You don't know what you're talking about. Because Crawford is locked in every single second of the fight. So the more you punch, right? I love both. Don't get me wrong. It's just Bud, to me, is a perfect fighter. No, I understand exactly what you're saying. You're a boxing fan, man. Just like me. You know, my favorite 2 fighters were Zab Judah and Chris Bird. But when it comes to this, it's a 50-50 fight. They're both the number ones in the division. Someone's going to go on to become undisputed. The other guy's going to remain number one. Simple, you know, so I agree. But when you talk about Crawford being locked in, with a guy like Spence, who's really is a volume puncher, right? The more you throw, the more there's a risk of you getting countered and hit with something. And with Spence letting shots go, Crawford's going to be sitting there watching, and he's going to wait to counter. He's going to wait for Spence to let those hands go, and I see Crawford catching him with the counter. And the other thing that concerns me for any opponent that faces Terrence Crawford, right? I'm going to be honest with you. Errol Spence is Superman. TQ's IQ versus Spence momentum. Absolutely. But Errol Spence is Superman. I'm going to sit here and tell you, he's Superman. Man got in a car accident, came back, went straight into a fight with Danny Garcia, banged his face all up. Went out there, man, fought Sean Porter, banged him up. Fought Ugas, banged him up. Okay? So Errol Spence is Superman. But Terrence Crawford is Southpaw Man. Errol Spence goes into the phone booth and comes out, S on his chest, Superman. Crawford goes into the phone booth, Orthodox Man, and comes out Southpaw Man. And whenever Terrence Crawford turns Southpaw, the fight ends. Whenever Terrence Crawford turns Southpaw, we all know it's a matter of time before the fight ends. So I want to see what happens, because now you got the IQ and ring generalship of Bud, like you're saying, truck driving gamer, and you got the IQ of Bud and the momentum of Spence, like you're saying, Elder, right? You have 2 guys fighting with these qualities, and I think most of the fight is going to be Southpaw versus Southpaw. Because Terrence Crawford, he can fight Orthodox, but for the most part, Southpaw is his thing. When's the last time we've seen Errol Spence getting there with a Southpaw who has power, who has IQ, who has ring generalship, and who's mean? How is Errol Spence going to do? Because, see, now they got to prepare for each other. All right? And I'm going to get back to this money. They have to prepare for each other. Derek James has a brilliant mind. Bomac, I don't care what anyone says, Bomac doesn't get the credit he deserves, in my opinion. I think a lot of people see Bomac as a one-fighter trainer, but he did develop he developed Herring, and he developed Maurice Hooker and grew those guys into champions. So there's some depth to Bomac and him being a trainer. But for the most part, some people see Bomac as a one-fighter trainer and Terence Crawford. Now, with Derek James, we know he has a brilliant mind. You look at what he's done with Errol Spence and what he's been able to do as far as evolving Jermell Charlo, right? Yeah, he is a super underrated elder. I think he's super underrated. And I was guilty for not giving him more credit because I was like, well, outside of Crawford, who? But a buddy of mine tightened me up real quickly. Like, what about these guys? I'm like, you're right. But for Derek James, outside of, you see he has AJ, and he still needs some time to see what he can do with AJ. Just picked up Ryan Garcia. We got to see what he can do with Ryan Garcia. But for Derek James, I'm not sure how he's going to approach this fight with Crawford. And that's my thing. They have to plan a strategy to fight someone who's coming in right-handed and someone who's coming in left-handed. So basically, Errol Spence has to prepare for two different type of. Basically, it's like he's fighting two different fighters, because that's what you get when you face Terence Crawford. And I'm not biased to Crawford. I'm just speaking facts. When you're in the ring with Terence Crawford, if you train strictly to fight an orthodox fighter, you're going to be in trouble when you go southpaw. If you've trained strictly to fight a southpaw fighter, you're going to be in trouble once he goes orthodox. And he's going to switch, but I think he'll fight this fight, most of the fight, as a southpaw. But Crawford said Bomac got squabbles. Hey, I'll tell you what, right? I'm not sure if Bomac can tranquilize anybody, but there's some videos floating around out there on YouTube with Bomac, some of his professional fights. And Bomac could fight. He could fight, but he wasn't even a damn gatekeeper. But he could fight. You know what I'm saying? Bomac, I don't know about now, because Bomac be sitting back eating, Cheeto Puffs, right before the ring walk and shit. So I don't know about now. But what I will tell you is Bomac was a professional fighter, and he did have he had some skills, but he never really got up to that level of being a real promising journeyman. I don't even think he got outside of 10 fights. He had a losing record. But at the end of the day, you can't sit there and look at that. That doesn't matter. He could fight. It's like you can look at Gabe Rosado's record. You know what I mean? You look at Gabe Rosado, and you look at his record and think he was a bum. Yeah, run up on Gabe Rosado and see what happens. Matter of fact, it's like they said back in the day, run up on MC Hammer. You remember MC Hammer, right? So if ain't nobody gonna run up on MC Hammer, who's never boxed, I don't think nobody should run up on no goddamn Bomac. Leave Bomac, MC Hammer, and Gabe Rosado alone. But what I was saying when it comes to this money, right? How come the deal was able to get made? That's what I want to know. Yeah, Gabe's a beast. So when they came to them before, talking about this money, $25 million apiece, nobody wanted to hear Crawford. Crawford was crazy. That's how they treated him. Like he's crazy, he doesn't know what he's doing. And don't get me wrong, there was a huge learning curve for Terence Crawford. He was out there just flying by the seat of his pants. He was getting some advice, had some lawyers in his corner, but for the most part, Crawford was trying to go in there and talk business talk, trying to talk as a promoter, trying to talk as a manager, and he was trying to do this thing with people who had brilliant minds and been doing this forever, and they were just able to basically nullify any and everything that Crawford tried to bring to the table to discuss. He was in over his head, okay? It's simple. I'm not trying to slight Crawford, but look, you can't just go from being a professional boxer and although you may think you understand the boxing business, he had the ups and downs over there with Top Rank, and to go now and think you can sit at a table with a cable network with promoters, let's just say Steven Espinoza, and sit there and think you can have an intelligent conversation and convince this man that he should take an interest in what you're bringing to the table. And I do think they dropped the ball on that. at least have a conversation. They didn't even have a conversation at the time with these people where the money's coming from. But you can't make me believe, and this is the point I'm trying to get at, that Terrence Crawford knows, right? Bomac got Keyshawn Davis also. That's right. You can't make me believe that Terrence Crawford, 6 months ago, there was $25 million on the table for him and Spence. Guaranteed that he's going to come into this fight now and not still want to get that $25 million guarantee. You can't make me believe Crawford's just going to walk away from that. Let me tell y'all something. Crawford's about his money. He's about his family. So I've been trying to find it out. I can't find out the specifics, but I know that him and Spence have agreed on a purse split. But my thing is, what was brought to the table or what information surfaced, right, to make Al Haymon, Espinoza, other key decision makers over on the PBC Showtime side, right, these networks, right, what key piece of information surfaced to make them say, you know what, I think that we are going to be able to find the money to make this fight happen. Because before, all they were saying is the money's not there. These guys have unrealistic financial demands. Just because they both feel they should make 20, 30, 40 million each for what is supposed to be the biggest fight in boxing, it doesn't mean that they're going to make that or there's a demand for it. You can't give them money that's not there. So when he said that, I said, man, that's odd. Now, I'm not thinking that's 40 million available, but you tell them you can't pay Crawford and Spence 20 million apiece. So I said, okay, something's not right here. So, I've been doing videos. I call it paying fighters on the curb, where they say, look, I'll give you a $1 million guarantee, and then we'll see how pay-per-view does. And if you do good on pay-per-view, well, then, and the live gate, well, that 1 million all of a sudden, you get 50% off the pay-per-view and you get whatever off the live gate, that 1 million turns into, it could be 5 or 6. If I give you a $5 million guarantee, throw a few more million on top of that. And that's what these promoters, have been getting away with since the Mayweather era. After Mayweather disappeared, they realized, okay, money's drying up. We can't just give these guys $8, $9, $10 million guarantees. We got to figure out something because the boxing fans aren't supporting pay-per-view. You know what I mean? The piracy, the illegal streaming is out of control. But these fighters still want to get paid. So that's what they've been doing. They give them these low guarantees, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, and roll the dice on pay-per-view. That's why Deontay Wilder almost had a heart attack when he fought Helenius. Those fights with Tyson Fury, amazing fights, did a lot for Wilder's profile and platform. He comes back to fight Helenius. He gets, some people say, I keep hearing Deontay Wilder's money's guaranteed. I believe he gets guarantees, but I don't believe he gets no $20, $30 million guarantee. I think he gets a guarantee of something very low. I don't know that for a fact, but I do believe he gets a few million. And then I think the dice had to be rolled on the pay-per-view numbers. And I thought Deontay Wilder, when he returned to boxing, I thought Deontay Wilder would have did like 750,000 buys. That's not what happened. The man did less than 100,000. And that's why I truly feel that's why Deontay Wilder came out and he was so frustrated with his whole setup and saying, you know what, instead of me just sitting here solely with PBC, I'm open to any promoter, any agency, any entity that wants to work with me. Because Deontay Wilder said, man, this not going to work. I'm not making the kind of money I want. For Terrence Crawford and Earl Spence, so now to see that they're getting these 8-figure guarantees, I personally think, first I need to do more research, but it's just not available right now to find out if in fact the Saudis are anyone involved with putting up money. If that's it's what's going on, Mills? He says as long as they're both in their primes, it's fine that it took a long time to make. Yeah, absolutely. But the question for me, Mills, like we were talking about, I need to know where that money's coming from. So I personally think it's not coming out yet, but I can't help but say it's a possibility that Crawford knows he could get this $25 million guarantee, came to the table. Now they're giving him 8-figure guarantees. Is it going to be the $20 million? Is it going to be the $25 million each? If so, where's it coming from? I think the Middle East, but I don't know that. So that's a possible. Now, that's A option. The B option is, which I think most people will follow me with this B option, because they don't probably know what's going on out there in Saudi Arabia. But I'll tell you this, right? It's my understanding when these guys over at PBC are fighting on pay-per-view, and Mills says if they had met years ago, it wouldn't have been for all the marbles. Absolutely, I agree with you, man. It wouldn't have, because belts were all over the place. But now they're all concentrated between the two fighters. Now, my understanding is, if you listen to what Adrian Broner said, he's still getting paid. Oh, he was still getting paid over the years money from pay-per-view events, pay-per-view money. Floyd Mayweather has gone on and said he still gets pay-per-view money. Logan Paul still hasn't got paid. And Mayweather said that's not how the process works. He will get his money, but you don't get it all immediately after the fight. Let me tell you, there's a big question mark on that process. But what I took from all that is Showtime, PBC, or whoever it is that's controlling the money, right? Once they have an event, if the event does well, like Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia, they just did very well. If the event does well, there are millions of dollars that are set aside now. This is their profit. And that can be used to help making guarantees for those big-time fights that they want to make. I personally think that B option could be that they were able to get the money for Crawford and Spence if Saudi or the Middle East isn't involved, right? They were able to get the money for Crawford and Spence to give them 8-figure guarantees, because some of that money is coming from the profit that was made with Tank Davis fought Ryan Garcia. I don't know that. I know they have investors. I know there's different revenues and modes and different streams of money that come into play, especially with fights of this magnitude. But that hasn't been divulged to us publicly yet. But I would not be surprised if, in fact, they decided to finally have a conversation with whoever was willing to put their money up, with the hedge funds or whatever from Terrence Crawford's side of the street. I wouldn't be surprised, you know. So where a lot of us felt like this fight wasn't going to happen, or some people say no. Al Haymon said nope. Let's just sit back and hold off. And maybe Al Haymon did that, if it's true, so he can have a conversation. And to really sort things out. And then say, okay, now I have all the information I need. You know what I mean? It's just like having a big piece of clay and you're trying to sculpt something. Now we can take this big lump of clay and let's start sculpting this into something very attractive. That's going to be attractive and a win for the fighters. Well, first, number one, for the fans, for the fighters, for the managers, promoters, networks, etc. And I think that's how we arrived to where we are today. Because when you talk about this, right? Hey, what's up, Luna? Let's hear how you see the fight playing out right now. With Crawford and Spence, man, I'm going to tell you right now, I've always said it and I'm going to say it right now, man. I think Crawford and Spence is a 50-50 fight, man. I do. Young Elder says Crawford's getting at least 15 mil for this, I bet. Yeah, I think Crawford's getting the real money. I don't know, but I can't see Crawford taking nothing too far from 25 million. I'm just being honest with you. But I think the fight's gonna go kind of how it always goes, man. You know, Spence is gonna come. He's gonna come at Crawford. He's not gonna sit there and try to outbox him. He's gonna come at him and try to chop him down, working behind that jab, coming with the straight left. You know, Spence keeps his chin tucked, but he's always punching. And once he gets in close, he steps aside, he bangs to the body, he comes upstairs. He doesn't give you much space to work. But the thing is, Crawford, this man just takes half a step back. He goes out on angles, and he has power in both hands. And I'm just not, and Crawford's not going to stay in the pocket and just let Spence bang on him. Crawford uses his legs, man. I mean, he still has his legs. And he can fight. Spence can fight on the inside. Spence can fight mid-range. Spence can fight on the outside. But that's not, I don't see him trying to do that with Crawford. Spence is going to want to be on the inside. But the thing is, Crawford can fight on the inside, but that's not where I think he's the most comfortable or will be against Spence. Crawford's going to take that half a step back, that mid-range, to being on the outside. But from outside to mid-range, I think Spence is going to have some issues if he allows Crawford to dictate the fight from mid-range. Because that's where Crawford, with those long, freakishly long arms, can start to work. And Crawford has fast hands, and Spence does too, but I think Crawford's hands are faster. And his ability to counterpunch and get shots off is amazing. I was watching Crawford and Sean Porter the other day, and I was watching to see what went wrong for Sean Porter in that round when they stopped the fight. And let me tell you something: when Crawford knocks Porter down, that wasn't a flash knockdown. Porter was trying to he put his fist down to prop himself up, and I saw his body kind of give out a little bit. So that tells me that he was hurt, man. And his dad must have saw that because he was right there. He's right there, damn, in the ring, basically. And I caught that when I watched it 2 days ago. And let me tell you, I personally think Spence is a little bit chinny. But I also think if you catch Crawford, you can hurt Crawford. But I think Crawford may catch Spence. If Crawford knocks Spence out, it's going to be a shot to the temple. Because Spence comes in with his chin down, that temple exposed, and Crawford's going to throw that shot at the temple. I think he's going to catch him at the temple. It's going to be a hook. I think so. Because Spence isn't going to sit there and try to sit there, man, and win a boxing match, man, from the center of the ring. They're not going to go in the middle of the ring and make this into a tickling contest. Spence is coming in to break bones. But Crawford does some very good, some very interesting things. Just being in there and being comfortable and able to just move on angles. Crawford wins fights on angles. Lomachenko is a guy who won fights on angles. Usyk is a guy who wins fights on angles. Floyd Mayweather was another guy who could turn you angles. When you have a fighter who's very proficient in fighting and using angles, and they have the power, T-Pitts says, what do you mean it's boxing? People are going to get hit in boxing, both fighters. What are you talking about, T-Pitts? We know. We know both fighters are going to get hit. What are you talking about? Say something specific. You said nothing just now. That was a huge win for Bud because Sean is the definition of having that dog in him. Absolutely, man. But T-Pitts, what are you saying? We're sitting here saying they're going to get hit. Who is how they're going to respond when they get hit? You've said absolutely nothing. And the thing, in my opinion, I think Crawford will get to Spence and early in the fight. I do. I personally think Crawford's going to land on him early in the fight. It's going to be a counter, and we're going to see Spence get hurt. I do. But the problem is, after the first, I would say after the first 5 rounds, if Crawford can't slow Spence down, then Crawford's going to be in trouble. Crawford is really going to be in trouble, man. I'm going to be honest with you. Because Spence gets stronger with every single round. And the stronger he gets, the more he starts to really break his opponents down. And if Crawford doesn't have an answer for that, it's going to get ugly later in the fight. Young Elder says, Crawford's pride might get him in trouble against Spence. Sometimes Crawford wants to get revenge when he gets smacked hard and begins to brawl. Not the way to go against Spence. That's true. You hit Crawford, he wants to hit you back. You saw how Crawford responded when he was fighting Mean Machine. He came back. But I just don't think Crawford's going to be as reckless. I don't think he's going to be as reckless. I think he's going to be definitely defensively responsible, getting in there and fighting against Earl Spence. I think he's going to be defensively responsible. But I just don't see Earl Spence being able to, especially early in the fight, really get those shots off on Crawford. I think Crawford's the first 4 rounds, I think he's going to sit there and we may find that the fight is kind of boring. I think there may be some lulls in it because he's going to be sitting there and being smart. All right, bro, got to go. Have a good one. All right, Luna, you take care. I think Crawford's going to be very patient. He's not going to let himself get behind in the fight, but I don't think he's going to sit there. Earl body work, Spence by stoppage. Yeah, I don't think Crawford is going to sit there and necessarily be overly anxious to try to go after Spence. But what you're saying here, Rich Dean, that I don't disagree with you at all. If this fight gets beyond round 5, right? And if Crawford hasn't been able to hurt Spence, make Spence think twice about just basically trying to, come in behind his jab and stop him. Yeah, Crawford does start slow. He does start slow. But man, he just can't find himself in a situation like Lomachenko against Haney and against Teofimo where you basically lose the first 6 rounds and then think you're going to come now somewhat later in the fight and pick it up and start to win rounds against Spence. That's just not what happens. You know what I'm saying? That's just not what happens. And I don't think, even as great as Crawford is, I don't think he can afford to lose the first 6 rounds and then decide the second half of the fight. That's where he's going to pick it up because Spence is going to slow down. Spence isn't slowing down. He hasn't, and I'm not saying that can't happen on fight night. You never know what's going to happen. But Spence has shown and been consistent with, especially once you get past that 4th or 5th round, the more you start to show the wear and tear, the more Spence puts that pressure on you. And it's just it'll be a matter of time. Somebody brought up something to me the other day when we were talking. They were saying in this fight, Crawford can afford to start off slow. They said Crawford can afford to get down by 8 rounds. This is what somebody was telling me, right? And they said, because at any time Crawford has the one-hitter-quitter power like Deontay Wilder. Now, to that, I had to tell that person to hold their horses and not take it to the stupid. Crawford can't let this fight, he can't allow himself to get behind like that. Does he have the power to tranquilize an opponent? Yes. But nobody out here hitting like Deontay Wilder, okay? So I don't think it's fair to compare this fight to Wilder and Luis Ortiz. You know what I'm saying? We can't do that. And when I say that, yeah, you guys agree, right? I'm not saying that to be disrespectful to Terrence Crawford. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is there's no one out here in boxing right now that can do what Deontay Wilder does. Now, can Crawford catch an opponent, anybody, and buzz him? Yes. But I'm just not sure that's something that is even, I don't think that's a realistic conversation, man. Truck driver Graham says, yeah, he can't afford to let Spence do that. He can't. Now, the other thing that I was paying attention to is being physical. Now, is Spence going to sit there now and be more physical than normal? Because if Spence can cut the ring off and somehow find Crawford taking the half a steps back, trying to create space, and Spence can close that gap, does he tie up Crawford now? Does he try to muscle him? Does he try to bully him around the ring? Because the reality is this. Terrence Crawford, you've heard Earl Spence say Terrence Crawford is too, what he says, light in the ass, right? That sounds funny, but there's some truth to that. But I think Terrence Crawford his body has really grown and he's evolved into a very strong, durable, elite welterweight. But the truth is, Crawford was able to melt his weight down to a moment in time to get to 135 pounds. Earl Spence never, ever, in his wildest imaginations, could ever get down beyond 147. 147, Earl Spence making 147 is the same thing for Josh Taylor making 140, same thing for Devin Haney making 135. Like, it's hard. It's a struggle. So that being said, Mills, yeah, whoever said, okay. Hey, reconnected. All right, good. But this damn thing is acting up over here. But what I will say, man, I forgot my damn train of thought, man. What I was saying. This damn computer was acting up just now. I'm talking about Crawford and Spence. But getting physical. Just what happens if they get physical? Because Crawford he really is a smaller fighter compared to Spence. He really is. But my understanding is Crawford is freakishly strong, right? And what you're saying right here, Mills, talking about the footing, man, is who's going to win the foot fight, And when it's Spence being a southpaw and Crawford being orthodox, the foot fight is critical. But when they're fighting southpaw versus southpaw, that's going to be interesting. Because now you got southpaw against southpaw. That's where that hook comes into play. You understand? And that's one way for one southpaw to get an upper hand on another southpaw is the timing and to counter and get that left hook off on him. Now, when we talk about timing, I don't think there's any argument where we sit there and break this down by timing. Who has the better timing between Spence and Crawford? Or at least who has shown that in fights? Maybe we have different opinions on that. I think Crawford's timing is better than Spence. I personally do. Now, combination punching. I mean, I don't know. To me, that's like they both can be very effective combination punchers. You know what I'm saying? And then power. I don't know who's been knocking people out and whose knockout streak has stopped. So I just think when we're looking at this, man, it really boils down. I think the first half of the fight could play to Terrence Crawford, although he starts off slow. That's where I think he's the sharpest, and he has an opportunity to catch Earl Spence coming in and being overly aggressive. But the second half of the fight, that's where it could be problematic for Terrence Crawford. Truck Driving Gamer says Crawford is a gym rat who doesn't abuse food. He stays disciplined in the kitchen. Spence seems like he's undisciplined when he's not in camp. I don't know. Could be wrong, but that's how it seems. Mill says Sean Porter said the reason guys melt down to 147 is because the money is in the division. He said there's a certain minimum that fighters get in each division. You don't get the same money at 154. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But for what you're saying, Truck Driving Gamer, man, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think there's any disagreement about who's the most disciplined out the two. I'm not saying Earl Spence doesn't have discipline. It's very difficult, man, to sit there and get yourself down to a weight that you don't want to do. Like, that's a process, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, that is a process of knowing you have to go back into training, do all this running, strict diet. You know what I'm saying? You have to. It probably takes them guys a month to mentally prepare themselves and process what they're about to put their bodies through. So for Earl Spence, I want to make sure, and I understand exactly what you're saying about discipline, right? I think for Earl Spence, he has discipline, but he also likes to enjoy himself and indulge in some things to where you may say he lacks discipline in those areas. You know what I'm saying? So like you're saying here, Chinchilla, about the drinking and stuff. Yeah, I think that's where the whole conversation about someone lacking discipline could be the fact that Earl Spence does like to, drink a little fire water from time to time and get intoxicated. And one thing we know, man, is that alcohol, it's not your friend. It slows you down. It doesn't do anything good for your body. I don't even care what they say about red wine. I just don't think you should put it in your body. Mill says Spence isn't known to throw the straight rights that have been able to bother Crawford. Not is he a timing jabber, he's a volume jabber. Yeah, Spence is what I call a mash-up, crash-up. You know what I'm saying? He's coming straight at you. He's throwing the jab. He's throwing that left hand to your body, hooking to the body, coming upstairs. He's getting close, bang you, step around on you, use those elbows to pin you on the ropes, bump you, keep his chest, keep his forehead right there into your chest. His head is buried in your chest. And this is the thing. Now, I'm going to tell you from sparring. I learned this shit when I first started sparring. Once you have somebody on the ropes, you don't need to be looking at them, man. You don't need to be looking in their eyes to see where to hit them. You don't need. Once you have your head in their chest, and you can look at the ground and see where their feet are, you know where the body is, you know where the head is. So that's why when you see Spence fighting, somebody was pointing out, well, Spence doesn't look at his opponents, he just looks at the ground. He doesn't need to look at his opponents once he's got you on the ropes and has his head buried into your chest, or has the side of his face pushed into your chest and his shoulder into your chest, and he's pushing with that right back leg and got all of his weight against you and leaning and has you get pinned against the ropes. And he's banging away with his left or right hand. Like, he doesn't need to be looking eye to eye. So yeah, I definitely think like Spence being the volume puncher and not really worrying about timing, because Spence's whole thing is just chopping you down, mashing you up, crashing you up, and then being able to impose his size and will on you. The third, Amos. Spencer doesn't even drink anymore. I don't know why people keep holding on to the past. I don't know what Spencer's doing. But I know he did an interview where he says he's kind of cut back on that. Now, if he stopped drinking, good for him. But I definitely don't feel that Spence is taking life for granted anymore. I don't think he's out here being as irresponsible with anything. I watched that interview. It sounds like Spence appreciates getting a second chance at life and an opportunity to make the kind of money he's making for that short period of time that he's in the ring. So if he actually stopped drinking, good. Young Elder says Spence simping for his woman may have softened him up also. Yeah. Hey man, I think it's good when you find happiness and some exclusivity with a woman. But one thing I will say this, right? If you have peace in your life, because we talk about this all the time, if you have a fighter who he has chaos in his personal life, he comes from chaos, and his only outlet is the gym. When he gets into that ring, he brings a different type of ferociousness. You know what I'm saying? A different type of energy and a different type of mentality, what I call the find a way mentality. Now, Earl Spence had that. He was, in his personal life, was a lot of ups and downs, issues with the children's mother, all kind of craziness he was going through, right? So he brought to me a certain ferociousness into the ring. He seems, as the last couple of years, to have found a happy space. Got a good woman who's all about him. She accepts accepts his children, and he seems to be in a good space. But when you got someone like that, does that mean, or can we expect for his ferociousness to be gone? So I think that's a fair question. I personally don't think so, because I watched an interview with Earl Spence yesterday where he said he has guys where they're friends. He said, but when they get in the ring, he said, I try to kill their MNF and ass. He said, but outside the ring, they're brothers. But he said it doesn't matter who it is. When he gets in the ring with them, he's trying to kill their MNF and ass, is what Earl Spence said. So that tells me that the ferociousness is still there. The competitiveness is still there. But I do think it's fair to ask that question, because my argument was, well, hold on a second. Crawford, ever since we've known him in boxing, has been an absolute menace inside the ring. Crawford coming in there, man, he doesn't care. Crawford's coming in there to tranquilize you. And I said, the reason I brought that up is because well, hold on, Crawford and Spence. Spence has had ups and downs in his personal life. Crawford, family life has always seemed to be good. Got those kids, they're athletic, intelligent kids. He's always seemed to be in a happy space in his personal life, yet he's always been ferocious. So that ferociousness in Terrence Crawford is just who he is as a human being. And I was like, with Earl Spence, we're going to find out if that's just who he is as a human being. Because they say Terrence Crawford is just mean. They say he outside the ring, he doesn't say much. They say he's just a super serious person. Where Earl Spence seems to be a bit more chill and jovial, you know what I'm saying? Mills says, people don't give Crawford the credit for being the vicious body puncher that he is. That's what actually got him to be able to slow Sean Porter down. He was killing Porter to the body. Yeah, we know those body punches go unnoticed, man. Yeah, I know Crawford got shot in the head and everything. But the point you're pointing out here, Mills, is a lot of times people don't recognize the body work. And you bring up a good point. Because we know with Earl Spence, we talked about that. Coming in, a mash-up, crash-up. He's going to break you down. He's going to the basement, and he's going out there and breaking out the glass and breaking the glass out your windows. And with Crawford, he's not necessarily trying to pin anybody on the ropes and bang to your body. Like, that's not Crawford's game. But he'll throw that jab to the body. He'll throw that straight left to the body. He'll get in close and throw that hook to the body, a double hook to the body, left, right, come back up top, step around. But he's invested, and I agree. He's definitely, all right, truck driving gamer, man. No, I appreciate you too, man. I appreciate it, man. Get some rest, eat something good, and we'll catch up next time, brother. What's up, Kamani? Appreciate you joining the chat. But yeah, Mills, no doubt, man. And I was watching that fight when he was fighting Sean Porter. I just think everything came full circle in that fight with Crawford and Porter. And Porter's dad can say, Porter wasn't putting in the work he was supposed to in the gym. I just personally think maybe there was a little bit of that, but I think that loss, as far as Porter losing to Crawford, had a lot to do with Crawford. Crawford wanted to win that fight. So it is what it is. But going forward, now that the welterweight division is bubbling, right? We're going to see some serious movements taking place now. Now, I can tell you this right now. It's already happening. And one thing that I think is a little interesting is what's going to happen with guys like Keith Thurman, guys like Boots Ennis. Now, before I get on that, if Earl Spence beats Terrence Crawford, someone has to activate a rematch. 30 days after the loss, they have to activate the rematch, and the rematch has to take place this year. Whoever wins that second fight, my understanding, there's no third fight, but we know they can always sit there and have a discussion and decide for a third fight if they want to. But I don't know if it's just going to happen that way. Is it me or Spence just fights like Julio Cesar Chavez? Very similar in style, man. Very similar in style. Just pressure fighters, man. But Spence can box too. I don't think Chavez was necessarily a guy trying to float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. But yeah, Spence in some spots does remind me of Julio Cesar Chavez. But my thing is, what happens when it comes to these guys staying at 147? Because I personally don't think, if they do the rematch, I think it's going to be hard for Spence to. If Spence loses, I don't know if Spence will want a rematch at 147. You know what I'm saying? So we have to wait and see. Crawford seems to be comfortable at 147. But for Earl Spence, if he loses, I'm just not sure Earl Spence is going to want to push for a rematch at 147 when he already has 1 foot outside of 147 and 154, because he does not want to make that weight. He doesn't want to do it. And if Earl Spence gets in here and for some reason Terrence Crawford is able to tranquilize him or just really outwork him or do the things to Earl Spence that he's never experienced, Earl Spence may say, you know what, I stayed here too long. Maybe like Teofimo Lopez. I should have left a long time ago. And he may just pass on a rematch and then he goes up. But the thing is, does Terrence Crawford stay at 147? You know what I'm saying? If they both stay at 147, then what happens? Young Elder said, I don't like trilogies because it damages both fighters and may affect the qualities of their lives afterward. It depends on the type of damage they took, man. Some people like the trilogies if it's real entertaining fights. But for what you're saying, I understand what you're saying. I totally understand with the damage those guys can take. Mills says, and he counters to the body. That's dangerous, and he pulls it off. He does. He does. And he's able to counter to the body and evade whatever punches are coming at him after he counters you to the body. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. Anyone who's expecting for Crawford to just come in here and just totally tranquilize Spence, I think you're mistaken. Anyone thinking Spence is just going to come out here and just totally beat Crawford down and Crawford doesn't stand a chance, I think you're mistaken, because there's so many of those intricacies, those things that are happening in the ear. If you don't have a trained eye, there's things that's happening that you're not seeing. From a guy pushing a fighter a certain direction, from a guy when he's just sitting there kind of parrying and just kind of pawing at his opponent or throwing feints, or all the little things that fighters are doing. Everything that Crawford especially that he does is the setup to set traps. Earl Spence is doing the same thing. But Earl Spence is just, there's so much volume. He brings so much volume. But you got to watch. There's some nice stuff that these guys are doing, especially when they get inside. Some of these fighters will step in between the fighter's legs. You know what I'm saying? Making them uncomfortable, getting them off balance, and then let go. So there's a lot of little things that go on, a lot of little nuances taking place in the ring that both of these fighters can do. That makes the fight even more interesting. And I'm going to be sitting here watching this, and I'm going to be, Nelly, hey, what's going on, Nelly? And I'm telling you what I'm going to be doing. I'm scoring this fight by the minute of each round. That's how I'm scoring fights now. And I think it's going to be very interesting, man. I'm trying a new way to score fights after watching that Vasily Lomachenko and Devin Haney fight. But Elder says Ali and Frazier. Yep, absolutely. Mill says Kenny Porter had 758 different excuses for that fight outcome. Yeah, man, bottom line is Porter just lost, man. Simple. Porter had good moments in the fight. It's just there's levels to it. And this is, you know, the thing about it, I could see the same thing happening to Earl Spence what happened to Porter. If Earl Spence is really trying to put on the pressure, tucking his chin, trying to get low, right? Because in boxing, the lowest man wins a lot of the times. You can get underneath the punches. But what I saw Crawford do is Crawford was able to take, it wasn't even a half a step back. He was able to throw combinations and time it when Sean Porter was looking to come in. And he was able to get his shots off in between Porter's and rattle off combinations, landing on the button. And that put Porter down. And and I could see that happening if Spence is just trying to come at Crawford in an aggressive manner, because Crawford fights with his eyes. But at the end of the day, I think Spence is bigger. Spence has a longer reach. That could be problematic for Crawford if he doesn't gauge his distance correctly. Because then now you got Spence, who could touch him, where Crawford's not expecting to get hit. But at the end of the day, we don't know. That's what makes this fight so intriguing, man. Young Elder says, I can definitely see Spence getting countered, coming straight forward on Crawford. Yeah, one thing I'll tell you is, in my opinion, right, because we're just having a conversation, Derek James is going to put together a solid game plan. You know, so the things that I think we got accustomed to seeing Spence do, we may see him do something a little bit different. I'm not saying he's going to overhaul him, like you just don't go and try to change a fighter before a fight like this, but you may see him do a few things that are a little bit different, because he can't just keep his head on the line. Like, he can't just sit there. Earl Spence isn't a guy with a whole lot of head movement. You know what I'm saying? He got high guard, coming forward. And that's what it is. Crawford got a 2-inch reach advantage. Okay, I knew Crawford had a freakishly long reach. So he got somewhat of a reach advantage. And I think he's going to need it. He's going to use it, and he knows how to use it. But, man, it is going to be an interesting fight. But no matter what happens, right? The first fight happens. If a rematch happens, it doesn't happen. At the end of the day, what happens to... Let me fix this for you guys, right? Let me fix this for you. What happens here at 147? That's my question. What happens here now? Let me make this a little smaller. because now that we got some movement here at 147, they can make some pretty intriguing fights. You understand? Very intriguing fights that can happen now. Now, one of the fights they were talking about happening is Conor Benn is calling out Keith Thurman. My understanding is Eddie Hearn has been in touch with the representatives for Keith Thurman a second time. I'm talking about recently. So there's a chance that Eddie Hearn is really trying to work to make the fight between Conor Benn and Keith Thurman to be on the undercard of Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford. Now, is that going to happen? Who knows? Take it with a grain of salt. But that's my understanding. Now, outside of that, we know we can account for Spence and Crawford. Finally, these guys have got the damn ball moving, got the ball rolling. Now you got to look at what's going to go on with Boots Ennis. Ugas is supposed to be fighting Mario Barrios. Ortiz Jr. and Stanley Unis are fighting now. Okay? But Thurman versus Ennis, let's do it. I agree 100%. As far as Eddie Hearn trying to get Conor Benn a fight over here with Thurman, let me tell you, man, there's already 3 states, Texas, I think Nevada and California. They've already shut Conor Benn down. They don't want nothing to do with Conor Benn. And Eddie Hearn is just finding it tough right now because nobody wants to really work with him because Conor Benn still hasn't resolved those 2 outstanding drug tests. And he's going to keep running into those impediments. So no matter how much money Eddie Hearn's trying to put in a Keith Thurman's face, Ugas' face, Ennis' face, it doesn't matter. These different states, right, these athletic commissions are not going to let that happen. Plus, they still got the British Boxing Board of Control that are looking to put sanctions on the events if Eddie Hearn was to have Conor Benn fight, and they're looking to revoke Eddie Hearn's promoter's license and any fighter who chooses to fight their boxing license. So they're not playing. But my thing is, as far as intriguing matchups, what do we have? Butayev, there's ever since Spence and Crawford have gone into that holding pattern, right? Nobody's fought. Ennis hasn't fought. Ugas, we know Ortiz and Stanley Unis have had the issues with Stanley Unis with the Achilles heel, Ortiz with the rhabdomyolysis. No mention of Butayev at all. Crowley came and fought, was supposed to be in a mandatory position for Errol Spence. Who knows what's going to happen with him? Vanessian got tranquilized and just disappeared. Rocha is in a pretty good position because Rocha was a mandatory to Crawford, but now he's got to fight somebody else. And when you come down here and take a look at what we got, listen, we should be able to see some good fights being made. You got Blair Cobb, you got Roman Villas still, you got Rashidi Ellis. So what I'm saying is, I expect to see some really good fights being made. You may see Boots Ennis fighting Villa. You may see Boots Ennis fighting Rashidi Ellis now. Okay? But there are going to be some very interesting fights being made now that you got Crawford and Spence, got the ball rolling there. But that being said, I don't think Thurman, although he's been inactive, I don't think Keith Thurman is a gatekeeper quite yet. I don't think it's fair to say Keith Thurman is a gatekeeper. But we don't know. Keith Thurman's about to be 35. I don't know if y'all realize that. Keith Thurman has been out the ring for a long time, man. And I don't care what anyone says. You can't just come back from being out the ring 3 years and think you're going to come. I mean, he's not Sugar Ray Leonard. This isn't Sugar Ray Leonard versus Marvin Hagler. You don't just stay out the ring all that time and come in and take on somebody like that. Keith Thurman, I just think he has to be smart with whoever he chooses as a comeback opponent. But that being said, it is what it is. Now, Eddie Hearn and what's his name? Devin Haney. Hey man, rumors are growing that Eddie Hearn and Haney could be teaming back up. Now, Devin Haney, we've gone round and round about Devin Haney and Lomachenko. But I want to touch on a few things about this. I'm not going to go back and forth on who won or lost the fight because I personally think after going back and watching that fight and breaking it down minute by minute, I personally think Haney won the fight, okay? But this is the thing. Devin Haney he's a free agent, man. And he's in a great position right now. You know, the biggest win of his career. The biggest win of his career this weekend. He's only 24 years old. It doesn't matter if you like him or not. But he's a free agent, and he's got a lot of options. And for him to come and get that win over Lomachenko, let me tell you, I don't like when people say that Lomachenko was a bum. You guys explain, if you think Lomachenko was a bum, someone please tell me how Lomachenko was a bum. That's all I'm asking. If you're gonna take time to explain to me how Lomachenko's a bum, when really he's one of the greatest fighters, excuse me, of this era. Mill says Ugas is in their top 5 after taking that beating and not having another fight since. Oh, let me go back to this and see what you're talking about. Ugas is in, hold on, let me see something. Yeah, Ugas is ranked number 3 in the WBC. And when it comes to, let me show you this. And Ugas is ranked, let me make this a little bit bigger for you, right? So Ugas is ranked number 4 in the WBA, number 3 in the WBC, and excuse me, he dropped out. You see, he dropped out of the WBO, and for the IBF, he's not even ranked. So he's ranked by the WBC and WBA. Yeah, so they still got Ugas up there, man. But that is it just lets you know, man. When these guys lose fights, it only affects some people, because when Ryan Garcia lost, they totally dropped him off the face of the planet. But then again, he was moving up. But when it comes to Lomachenko's not a bum, man. He's not. You know, he's one of the greatest fighters of the era, had an outstanding amateur career. But I think his dad did him wrong by keeping him in the amateur ranks for so long, because to win two gold medals and come back out here fighting as a pro, he lost probably a good 8 years off of his professional career. That's why he has limited fights. Kamani says, I think Devin easiest fight to make is a Loma rematch. Tank playing business games. Well, I was about to tell you, I was about to get on that. But the Loma rematch, that may happen. But check this out. So this is where I always talk about the secret society. This is horrible what's going on right now. Lomachenko and his team, they're really being entertained by these different commissions and these decision makers, right? They're really being entertained to sit here and rank Lomachenko as number 1 and forcing a rematch between Lomachenko and Devin Haney. Like, that is a conversation that's really taking place. And I don't know how to feel about that. You're going to come now and really entertain forcing the rematch on Devin Haney? How? That fight wasn't a robbery, man. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't a robbery. We've seen robberies. One of the biggest robberies. A matter of fact, I don't even have to take it back that far. But Jamel Charlo and Tony Harrison, that first fight, to me, that was a robbery. But if you go look at Paul Williams and Sergio Martinez, that was a robbery. You go look at Fernando Vargas when he fought Winky Wright, that was a robbery. Okay? So to come down with Lomachenko, when I first watched the fight, because I'm watching and I'm seeing some of the flashy shots being landed by Lomachenko, but it almost felt like Lomachenko was winning the rounds. I went back and watched it because I said everyone is really split on this, but I went back and watched the fight. Let me tell you, Lomachenko didn't win. I had the first six rounds going to Haney. And, you know, hey, some people have exception to what I'm saying. I'm telling you, and I'm fair. I scored it by the minute. I did that intentionally so I could break down each minute of every round so I could try to be as fair as possible. Lomachenko didn't beat Haney, but he did come on after round 6, and he did have some he had some moments, and he won some rounds, but he didn't beat Haney. Kamani says, I had Devin 8-4 from the jump. The rematch to Hush Crybabies looked like the iron is hot. Oh yeah, it's coming, and I just can't wait till they make a decision. But it's I personally think they know Devin Haney, who's fought at lightweight for his whole career, that it's not just assumed, but more than likely he's going to drop those belts, and he's going up to junior welterweight. Now, the only way Devin Haney won't go up to junior welterweight, right? I think it's going to depend on who's advising him, which my understanding is Eddie Hearn is, you know, kind of circling Devin Haney and trying to you know, reseal the deal to bring him back over to Matchroom, because now he has an undisputed champion who's young, who's a great fighter, and Eddie Hearn will probably get him some work. But Devin Haney, the demand for Devin Haney, and as far as his value, has gone through the roof. All right? But I think for Lomachenko and his team and the whole secret society, because I do believe the secret society is involved now, they may be looking at trying to get Devin Haney for 2 reasons. One, they know if he drops those belts. If Devin Haney drops those belts, everybody has a fight for him. So Lomachenko will never, ever be able to go and take 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 more years to fight his way back into an undisputed distinction. Like, it's just damn near impossible once those belts get broken up like that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is they know Devin Haney struggles to make 135. Now, the way they did things was very unusual. But the reason why they had that weigh-in first thing in the morning, right, which it's not uncommon for some weigh-ins to take place in the morning, but it wasn't public, is because they didn't want the public to see just how ghoulish Devin Haney looks to make 135. They learned their lesson from that. But Devin Haney, there's an image floating around with Devin Haney. He got the hood on, the hat on, the sunglasses on, but you can still look at his facial structure and see how dehydrated he is, how sunken his face is, man. And it's scary. It really is scary to see him like that. But they may be saying, you know what? This could be our opportunity. Because for Devin Haney to allow Lomachenko to really pick it up the way he did, and especially I think it was around 10 and 11, the way Lomachenko picked it up, that means that Devin Haney slowed down a bit in those rounds. If it's from the weight cut, if it's from being drained and dehydrated, and the effects of that showing up later in the fight like it did, in a rematch with Lomachenko, Devin Haney may be in an even worse position. Because Lomachenko says he took the 12th round off. Imagine if Lomachenko would have been able to come out there and put on the pressure on Devin Haney from the first second of from the 12th round to the last second of that 12th round. Maybe he could have got a standing 8. We don't know. It didn't happen. But these are the things that I'm sure they're talking about over there in the Lomachenko camp. And if they force, I'm going to go ahead and say this. If they force a rematch on Devin Haney, then I've given up all hope when it comes to boxing. And as far as the corruption that I'm always talking about, the secret society, these key decision makers behind the scenes, man, it just proves my point, man, that nobody cares anymore. It's just ridiculous. That'll be blatantly corrupt to do that to him. Young Elder says Loma won 5 rounds top, and that's generous. Now, I don't disagree with you. But a huge check, they're going to have to pay Devin Haney some huge money for him to come and fight Lomachenko again. Devin Haney's coming out here now, and he's even lashing out at Bob Arum. Bob Arum, this the thing, man. You can't be biased. It's like me. What I did for 25 years. The amount of people I had underneath me. I may have had someone that, be honest with you. You may have someone that you have more in common with than someone else, but you're responsible for both of them. At the end of the day, you got to be fair. You got to be fair. You know what I'm saying? But for Bob Arum to come out there, Lomachenko walks across the stage and says, you won that fight. I don't know what the hell the judges were looking at. You won that fight. That's crazy. And then Devin Haney come out and Bob Arum act like, well, I don't have nothing to say. I'm not the judge. And, I represent both fighters. That tells you right there that Bob Arum didn't have the best intentions towards Devin Haney. That's why Devin Haney said Bob's old ass was sleeping. I was watching in between the rounds at Bob, and his old ass was sleeping. No in the world Devin Haney and his father would continue fighting over there on Top Rank. I don't think. Although Paulie Malignaggi said they re-signed with Top Rank 2 days before the Lomachenko fight. Now Devin Haney is saying it's not true. Makes you wonder how the hell Paulie Malignaggi can get away with saying all the stuff that he says. I don't necessarily agree with things Paulie Malignaggi says. I think he's got some serious issues. But with a guy like that, you almost want to say, hey, with a person like that, they're going to say the truth because they don't care. But for him to just come out, I know he doesn't like Devin Haney, but to just come out and just lie on him like that without consequence, that's a problem. That's a problem. But we're going to see just in fact who Devin Haney is signed to, because right now, we don't know. All we know is what's being said. We'll see who with his next fight. We'll see who he's with, and then we're going to know if Paulie Malignaggi was telling the truth and Devin Haney was lying. But I don't think he should continue with Top Rank, in my opinion, because Bob Arum, I don't think he has his best interest in mind. I don't. I think he needs to go over there with Eddie Hearn. That's just my opinion. But Kamani says, if Devin is forced to by review, then Bob won. Oh, yeah. If he's forced to, then that Bob Arum has been around boxing for a long time. He has connections, and he's able to, if he can pull strings and make things happen. The third, Amos, if they force a rematch, can he just drop the belts? Yeah, he can drop. They can't make him fight it. There wasn't nothing in the contract where Lomachenko, Devin's not contractually obligated to give Lomachenko a rematch. But if they try to force a rematch, he can drop the belts. Yeah, he doesn't have to. But that's what I'm saying. It's going to be interesting to see what they do here. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do when it comes to this rematch with Haney and Lomachenko. But I hope they don't do that. Kamani says Loma would have to fight Shakir to get back on after the belts drop. Yeah, he's going to have to, if he wants to stay at 135, if those belts get dropped, you know Shakir is going to fight and he's going to pick one up. Bob's going to find a way for Keyshawn Davis to pick one up. And then the other guys at 135, they're going to have to figure out a way for them to get their hands on the title. But if that was to happen, if they were to fragment that the undisputed distinction and now you're dealing with the belts floating around, I personally think now, when you look at it, Lomachenko may have an opportunity to pick up a belt again. But I think he should go to 130. But Davis, if he stays at 135, if Devin dropped those belts, Davis would pick up a belt, Stevenson would pick up a belt, Davis could pick up a belt, and Frank Martin or Cruz. But if they make them fight each other, well, then now you got a problem. But I think easily Lomachenko, Davis, Stevenson, and Martin, and Davis have good chances of picking up belts again. It just depends on the matchmaking. It just depends on the matchmaking and who they decide to have to fight each other to win the vacant title. So that's what makes it interesting. But that being said, that's the story on Devin Haney. His pay-per-view numbers didn't do that great. Didn't get the support he was looking for. We talk about the business side of things in the chat. let me tell you, man, at the end of the day, and this is going to tie into talking about Tyson Fury, what we're running into with Devin Haney and Tank Davis is the same thing with Usyk and Tyson Fury. It's the exact same dilemma. Usyk has all those belts. Devin Haney has all those belts. Tyson Fury is the guy that's selling out, breaking live gate records. He's the draw. He's the one people really want to see. Tank Davis is the guy out here breaking all these live gate records. Pay-per-view wise, I'm not so sure Tank Davis. I'm not so sure Tank Davis is a pay-per-view superstar. Those numbers they did. Hey, we got to give a lot of credit to Ryan Garcia. People don't want to give Ryan Garcia credit. Got to give him credit for those pay-per-view numbers. But if Tank Davis comes out here after he gets off house arrest or whatever and he fights again this year and he's able to do, I would say 750,000, then that means Tank Davis is on his way. I mean, he's arrived, but I don't think so. But when you got a guy like that who's making that kind of money, Devin Haney can't come to the table and decide he's going to dictate terms. You would think he'd be able to because he has all those damn belts. And belts matter. But, Tank Davis, he may want a rematch clause in there. Devin Haney and his dad's already said there's not going to be a rematch clause. Tank Davis is saying that he's an A-side. Devin Haney and his dad say, no, they're the A-side. They're the undisputed. So right there, you can't go any further with negotiations between the two because they can't even get beyond who's the A-side and a damn rehydration clause. The next problem you're running into when it comes to Tank and Devin, right, is that Tank is saying he only wants two people at 135. Gervonta Davis said there's only two fights he wants. He wants to either fight Shakur Stevenson or Devin Haney at 135. That's what recently came out from Tank Davis. He only wants to fight Devin Haney or he wants to fight Shakur Stevenson. And to be quite frank with you, if they were to fight, kind of hard to go against Tank Davis. You know what I'm saying? It really is kind of hard to go against Tank Davis because Tank Davis has proven that he can tranquilize anyone. Tanya Brewer, how you doing? How you doing, Tanya? She says Loma team has petitioned the WBC to replace Shakur as a mandatory. This whole thing has gotten so out of pocket. At 100%, Tanya, we agree with you. Absolutely. It's like I say, man, it's a goddamn secret society. You're talking about Loma trying to replace Shakur Stevenson, right? Now, that's complete madness to do that. It is. Because this is as of 6 April. So unless there's an update, when you look at the WBC ranking, Lomachenko was number 1, he lost. Pitbull Cruz was 2, Shakur Stevenson was 3. Now, just because Lomachenko lost doesn't mean Cruz becomes number 1 now. Shakur Stevenson probably becomes number 1, which I think that's what happened. But for them to come and think they can just take and put Lomachenko back as number 1, that's crazy. Because Lomachenko was the number 1 over at the WBO and for the WBC. So Devin Haney had fulfilled his obligation to fight the mandatory for the WBO and WBC by fighting Vasily Lomachenko. But to come out there and for them to try to do this crap, that's complete madness. You know what I'm saying? And if they do it, which is a possibility, it's just, to me, it's wrong. Absolutely wrong. But for Tank Davis and Gervonta Davis and Devin Haney, I think the optimal matchup for Gervonta would be for him to fight Shakur Stevenson, especially if these sanctioning bodies don't get involved and start, forcing Devin Haney to fight Lomachenko again. But Devin Haney may go do something different, but they may force it on him. But I just think the easier fight to make is Shakur and Tank. But then again, what's his name? Bob Arum's going to start talking about other side of the street crap. You know what I mean? That's what he's going to talk about. Oh, they're on PBC. That's when these guys don't want fights to be made, that's when they start talking this nonsense. But, at this point in time, they just need to make the fights. It's crazy. Young Elder says, I heard Loma is trying to force a mandatory with Tank Davis. I don't know. I didn't hear that. But if Loma is trying to fight Tank Davis, if he did say that, it just sounds like he's anxious and he's panicking right now. Because Lomachenko knows he's 35 years old. He's got a lot of wear and tear on his body. You figure all those amateur bouts, all that training, all that fighting. Him, not being able to pull the trigger like he needs to in a fight. You figure the first 6 rounds, if Lomachenko would have really let his hands go, half of those first 6 rounds, if the first minute and a half of the first 6 rounds, Lomachenko let his hands go, Lomachenko would have won the fight. But he didn't let his hands go the way he should have. So to me, you lose your right to complain. You know what I'm saying? You lose your right to complain when the fight goes to the scorecards. I watched that fight with no volume. I sat back and I watched it, the whole fight. I rewatched it, but I studied those first 6 rounds because I couldn't understand why people were saying Lomachenko didn't win any of those rounds. And I watched it. I understand why. He didn't put any work in. He didn't really put that much work in. He had a moment or two, but he didn't really put the work in. But if he would have just for half of the round let his hands go, Lomachenko would have won more scorecard. He would have won some of those rounds. And I think the scorecards would have looked different at the end of the fight. But what that tells you is Lomachenko knows that he's slowing down. He can't fight the first second of the first round to the last second of the 12th round anymore. He can't do that. He has to really create the right balance when it comes to his stamina and it comes to his work rate. And if you're in a fight, yeah, Tanya's laughing. I wish Loma would fight Tank. Tank would tranquilize Lomachenko. Simple. Lomachenko's too small. He's a 126-pounder. He shouldn't even be at 135. But he deserved to be commended because he was dominating 126 pounds, dominating 130. Nobody really wanted to fight him. Came to 135 and was very close to being undisputed. But then, he lost to Teofimo. Then he went off to war. And, he probably, I'm not saying he has regrets for going off to war, but I'm sure he's like, damn, I wish I could have done it differently. Or, damn, he hates Vladimir Putin because it's really because of Putin that Lomachenko didn't get the shot to fight Kambosos, which I think Lomachenko would have beaten Kambosos. But the bottom line is Lomachenko, he can't pull the trigger like before, okay? And it has a lot to do with the weight division that he's in. It's just like Adrian Broner. You guys hear me talk about this. Adrian Broner was an absolute monster at 130, 135, 140. People talk about Adrian Broner sucks. Adrian Broner doesn't suck as a fighter. It's just at 147, the guys are too big for him. He still had power and stuff, but it didn't really carry up to the weight that he wanted. And that's something that I think we got to keep in mind. A guy like Broner and Lomachenko, these are much smaller guys that I think they just plateau. And for Loma, he plateaued at 135. For Broner, 147 was where he peaked, and he should stay probably at 140 is the best weight class for a guy like Broner. Tanya says, me too. I've never watched a fight so many times. I had Loma winning 3, 8, 10, and 11, but saw 3 fights, 7, 8 as super close. I could see giving Loma around 7. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Tanya, I'm going to tell you right now, man, your scorecard is spot on. And even if you gave 2 of the first 6 rounds of Lomachenko, you wouldn't be wrong because it just depends on what you're looking at, and that's why it's so much, ambiguity with judging, man. You know what I'm saying? If a guy lands one hard shot in the round, that hurts the opponent, but the other 2 minutes and, 50 seconds, he's getting outboxed. Some judges like the fact that that one shot did most of the damage, and they'll give that round to that fighter. So it's just a huge gray area. But for me, like yourself, Tanya, it looks like you tried to be fair. And I came up with something very similar to what you came up with. Kamani says, Loma is food. Any of the top guys would welcome a fight. Loma told Shakur he needs 4 belts to get a fight at 130. Yeah, that's ridiculous. Well, we know Lomachenko's not in the driver's seat for anything anymore. And to see him cry like that, I see people making fun of him, and some of the things people are saying I don't agree with, man. I just don't believe in certain subjects. I just don't really get into it. I stay away from it. But Lomachenko, I mean, the man, that was his goal since a child. You know what I'm saying? And he had the opportunity, missed it. So he was crying. But I'll tell you what, I think that those tears, it wasn't just that he felt he got robbed. Had a lot to do with him knowing that he's not going to be the same fighter in 5-6 years from now, which is the time it would take for him to probably get back around to being in position to fight for an undisputed distinction. He's not going to be the same fighter then that he is now. So basically he'll never get an opportunity to fight for an undisputed distinction again. So that lifelong dream has evaded him. But he's got to blame himself because he could have done more in that fight. But Devin Haney had a whole lot to do with Lomachenko not letting his hands go. Devin had a lot to do with that. Young Elder says, I always thought Loma should have stayed at 130. Yeah, no doubt about that. What's going on, 818? Good afternoon to you. 818 coming here strong, boy. But yeah, 818, we're sitting here talking about Devin and Loma and talking about just kind of how the fight ended up and the fact that it looks like they're trying to force a rematch on Devin Haney. And I just think that's a foul, man, to sit there and do that to Devin Haney. And we're all pretty much in agreement with that as far as the rematch. But that being said, Eddie Hearn and Devin Haney. If Devin Haney does re-sign or continue to work with Eddie Hearn, I think that's a good move. But where else can he really go? But I think going with Eddie Hearn, they're going to pay him a little more money, and that's what him and his dad are looking for. They've even gone on record and said, look, we've put the work in. We've rolled the dice on our career. You know what I'm saying? They understand that. Now they're looking to land massive fights for massive money. And they said if they're going to stay at 135 or 140, that's what they're looking at. And, it was close. I think the fans won. Haney versus Loma should be a big payday for Haney. Hell yeah, they both should get some real money. They really do. People need to understand. They don't like Devin Haney, but he had a very successful 3-fight run with Top Rank. You know what I'm saying? He went over there and became the undisputed lightweight world champion. And he defended that distinction. He had 2 defenses, right? So since being on Top Rank, he's coming from the zone. He's been featured on ESPN. He had a network deal over there. So he's been Devin Haney may have been in front of more viewers than any other fighter in boxing right now. On the zone platform, they were doing things independently before they went with the zone. Then he goes over to ESPN. Let me tell you something. Devin Haney is definitely not just one of the faces of boxing. Devin Haney is, for the next generation, right? He is the face of this next generation. And for him to become the youngest undisputed lightweight world champion, and actually the first undisputed champion in the 4-belt era, the youngest undisputed champion in the 4-belt era. Let me tell you something. That was no small feat, man. Elder says, Cool Boy better be careful fighting the monster. The secret society may interfere. Cool Boy got his hands full with Inoue. Inoue is another one of those complete fighters, man. And not just as a pro, you go back to the amateur ranks and see when you get guys who are knockout artists in the amateur ranks, that's a telltale sign that there's something special about their hands. You know what I'm saying? Devin is big biz, man. He is. That's why Stevenson wants to fight him. That's why Shakur Stevenson wants to fight him. Right? And if Devin was to re-sign with Top Rank, which we don't know what he's doing, all that crap, we don't know what the hell's going on with Devin. Is he with Top Rank? Is he going with Eddie Hearn? But I'll tell you what, the interesting matchups is definitely that Shakur Stevenson fight. That's why he's calling him out. Shakur Stevenson, for those of you who don't realize it, he's a 2-division world champion as well. He's been out there putting in work. Man picked up a silver medal in the Olympics. And Stevenson, many would say, he's one of the best of the modern era. And he's not trying to be friends with anyone in his weight class. Shakur Stevenson just doesn't care. He may have that little weird smile. And you know he's Puerto Rican too, you know. He got that little weird smile with them weird dimples in his cheek. But at the end of the day, he may be cordial with you, but he's nobody's friend. And he let it be known to the world that he wants to fight Haney. You saw he stepped to him at the end of the fight. And Haney said, I'm number one. And what Stevenson say? Something like, not for long or whatever. But I'm telling you, if Haney stays at lightweight and he signs with Top Rank, that's the fight that everybody's going to want to see. Then you got the built-in feud between Devin Haney and Teofimo Lopez, which I think it goes back to the sparring stories, from, I don't know, like years ago, right? And Lomachenko was the first to beat, Lopez was the first to beat Lomachenko. So there's a good build-up there where Lopez, he likes to brag about himself. I was the first to do it. Devin Haney just got my leftovers. The reason he was able to beat Lomachenko is because I already broke Lomachenko down and took his heart. But let me tell you something. When it comes to Devin Haney and that public rivalry where we saw him and Lopez getting into it, I don't know where they were. They were in Madison Square Garden. I don't know where they were, but Devin Haney was with his dad. Teofimo was with his dad, and they were going at it. Bottom line is, if Teofimo and Devin Haney, if that fight continues to get some momentum, and if Devin decides to stay with Top Rank, you could see Devin Haney fight Teofimo, especially at 140, because he can go to 140, right? Let me show you all this. Devin Haney can go right up to 140 as the WBO champion and get a mandatory shot at their WBO champion. With the WBO, you can go up one weight division or down one weight division and immediately challenge the champion. So that's why Devin Haney is talking about going to 140, because when Josh Taylor and Teofimo fight here in the next couple of weeks, Devin Haney's going to be watching to see who wins. Now, if Josh Taylor beats Teofimo like I expect, I don't think Devin Haney can beat Josh Taylor. But I will say this. Josh Taylor struggles to make 140. Devin Haney be going up to 140. Devin Haney could catch Josh Taylor at the right time, and Devin Haney could tranquilize him. Because that weight cut is horrible for Josh Taylor. But if Teofimo wins, I still think Devin Haney beats Teofimo. And the reason why I think he beats Teofimo is because I don't think Teofimo's dad is a good trainer. And I think the reason why we saw Teofimo kind of rise to what I'm going to say is, and become such a popular athlete in the sport of boxing is because Teofimo and his dad had Joey Gamache over there. The two fights that stand out to me were the Richard Comey fight for Teofimo and the Lomachenko. In those fights, Joey Gamache was over there helping with the training. Joey Gamache had over 50 professional fights, single-digit losses, 2 weight division champion. He's the one that brought the best out of Teofimo. But then Teofimo goes to fight Kambosos. Top Rank doesn't get the purse bid. Triller gets it. Anyway, the money wasn't there for them to pay Joey Gamache, which I think was a foul. They should have paid him anyway. And then they separate and go separate ways. Then he goes in there to fight Kambosos, and then Teofimo gets his ass tranquilized. So ever since then, he goes to 140, has 2 fights. He looks horrible. And he ends up now fighting who really is the undisputed champion at 140, but the Secret Society pulled them belts off of Josh Taylor. They did him a little bit dirty. So now he goes up and he gets to fight Josh Taylor for the WBO title. But Teofimo's out here complaining and saying that, Bob Arum loves black people. What kind of foolishness is that? You know what I'm saying? So Teofimo just, to me, put himself in a bad spot. But what I was getting at when it comes to Devin Haney and Teofimo is there's some history there. And that would be definitely something on the bucket list for a lot of us fight fans if Devin Haney and Teofimo were to fight at 140. And I think that would be an interesting fight. Then you got a couple other guys like Jose Ramirez and Arnold Barboza, but most people don't really know those names. Now, I don't know if Devin Haney would ever sign with Premier Boxing Champions. But Young Elder says Dev needs to fight Shakir and Tank at 140. 135 is just too much for him to keep doing. Now, I agree with you, but Devin Haney said, these are Devin Haney's words. He said, I'm going to end up fighting Tank and Shakir Stevenson. He's like, we're on a collision course. But this is what he said, and words matter. He said, whether it's at 135, 140, or 147. So when Devin Haney said that, that told me that Devin Haney's not looking to just jump into a fight with Tank or Shakir anytime soon. He's okay with waiting until these guys get a few more years into it and possibly fight at 147. But I agree. Devin knows to fight a guy like Tank at 135 probably isn't the best thing to do. And even fighting Shakir Stevenson at 135 probably isn't smart, especially for him, the way he's cutting the weight and he's making himself, to me, vulnerable. Kamani says, I got Regis as the top at 140. Now, I agree with you. I think Regis beats everyone. But continuing on, the most exciting option from a fan perspective, like we've been talking about, if Devin Haney can, sign with PBC for a couple fight deal or work with him, is for him to fight Gervonta Davis or Rolly Romero. Like, out of all the names that we're talking about, Gervonta Davis and Rolly Romero, to me, those would be two very fun fights for for Devin Haney. I think Rolly Romero before Tank because, if he loses the Tank, he loses out on fighting Rolly. But he gets an opportunity for a title at 142, at 140 as well. So you got the Teofimo Josh Taylor thing that's happening, could be a title. Hey, they may work it out. He fights Rolly for that WBA title. And I remember Haney started his career with Showtime Series Showbox, the next generation. So going back over to Showtime or whatever network PBC decides to align with, hey, it's something that could happen. It's feasible. Okay? So PBC got Gervonta Davis. To me, baddest man at 135. Got the ties to Floyd Mayweather. Devin Haney's got ties to Floyd Mayweather. It's a very interesting fight, man. They got the stories about sparring sessions. Makes it interesting. But we'll see. Because that fight would be built into a grand finale fight before they get to Stevenson. Rolly Romero just picked up a title. Great personality. We have to see what happens. A lot of back and forth between him and Devin Haney. Sparring stories will be entertaining. Will definitely be on pay-per-view. Now, him going to Matchroom, Devin Haney, the problem with that is now you're looking at 140. Is where most of the fights would have to take place. You got Regis Prograis. Matias may be coming over there. Jack Catterall. You got Richardson Hitchens. Ryan Garcia. You got Zepeda. But I'm going to tell you right now, those names are problems. Ryan Garcia is probably the only fight I see like that could be a big business fight with Haney. Would do huge numbers. But those other fights just seem, especially Shakir. Yeah, no doubt, man. I hear what you're saying, Elder. But for him to come out here and think he's gonna go and fight Regis Prograis or Matias at 140, no, I don't think so. I don't think so at all, man. Why was Gary Russell suspended? Let me see if I can find it out for you because I was trying to find it out too. I didn't know if that was just a rumor, but I did see that too, man. I just couldn't get an answer on why he was. Okay, let me see. I think I got it right here. I'll tell you right now. Yeah. Now I don't know. I heard something about inactivity, but Tanya was asking, anyone find out why Gary Anton was suspended? Would love to see more from him. No, I agree. I would like to see more from him too, but I don't know why he was suspended. I couldn't find out. But while I'm talking, I'm trying to find it. I'm trying to find the answer for you because I searched the internet all day yesterday trying to find that answer, but I couldn't find it out. But what I'll tell you is he was indefinitely suspended by the New York State Athletic Commission. But the rumors are going around that he's on the June 24th card, headlined by Adamus and J-Rock. So I don't know. But he's supposed to be fighting on the Adamus and J-Rock card. For those of you who didn't know, man. But there's some videos out there, man, where they're talking about it, but they're not really giving the specifics. All I know is he's supposed to be fighting. He's supposed to be fighting on an undercard, man. So we'll see. I don't think they've said because I've been looking too. Yeah. I just found some information here, but all they're saying is he's supposed to be fighting. Spence just posted a cryptic message on his IG. I need to see what they're posting out there, man. But I'm really curious about that, man. I don't know. But one thing I am going to do, I'm going to buy some of that merch, man. I think Spence and Crawford both have some merch. I'm going to get that. But the other thing I want to talk about is Tyson Fury and the quagmire that he's created for himself, man. Tyson Fury is about to fight Dempsey McQueen out there in Australia. Because Tyson Fury has went out here and basically played himself. And basically just out here wanting to screw people, man. You know, taking 90% of the fight purse, 80% of the fight purse. You know, being Greedy Belly, you know what I mean? So now Greedy Belly is out here saying that he wants to fight Usyk now. And I just think that's crazy that Tyson Fury is now saying, forget about the he say, she say, all the finger pointing. Now Tyson Fury is calling out Usyk to fight in the summer. But then he's supposed to have this Dempsey McQueen guy. So it's just all drama with Tyson Fury. Like, we can talk about being tired of boxers. I'm personally tired of Tyson Fury. But I'll give you some news right now, since we're talking about Tyson Fury and Usyk. Alexander Usyk and Daniel Dubois, they have the full purse bid results that just came out. So there was a purse bid by Alex Krasium, you know, that's the promoter for Usyk, of $8 million. Frank Warren put out a purse bid of $5.6 million. So it's going to be a 75-25 purse split, which means Usyk is going to receive $6 million and Dubois will receive $2 million. And the fight's targeted for August 12th in Poland. So that's the latest and greatest on Usyk and Dubois. The fight's going forward. I don't think Dubois stands a chance, in my opinion, against Usyk, but it is what it is, you know. But I don't think he stands a chance. Not at all, man. But ESPN, they went out there and updated their pound for pound rankings. Let me show y'all this right here. Okay. They updated their pound for pound rankings, and you can see they got Devin Haney. Man, I am not trying to hate on this young man, but they got Devin Haney ranked at number 9, Shakur Stevenson at number 10. They got Bertabiev at number 8, Tyson Fury at 7, Bivol at 6, Alvarez at 5, Spence at 4, Usyk at 3, Inoue at 2, Terrence Crawford at 1. But they don't have Jamel Charlo on here. They don't have Tank Davis on here. So, you know, it's always something going on out here with these guys, man, with these damn pound for pound rankings. You know, I just don't pay that stuff any attention, you know. But the last thing I want to talk about is Paulie Malignaggi and his hating ass. He needs to find something to do. Because, let me tell you something. It's horrible to be a guy like Paulie Malignaggi, with everything he's done in the sport of boxing, to be sitting there in his position, which he really doesn't have one anymore. He got a little boxing channel, but to sit there and just want to tear down fighters, lie on fighters. I don't know what his problem is. I heard people say things, like Paulie Malignaggi. They feel that, and we're all adults. We're just having a conversation. They feel that Paulie Malignaggi may be a guy who has an issue with, talking about fighters and race and stuff like that. I don't know what his story is, but what I will tell you is, I just think he's toxic, and if he's not telling the truth about the things they're saying, somebody should sue him and tighten him up with the quickness, man. They should, because I'm getting tired of hearing this guy with all of his negative, commentary. I'm really tired of hearing it, man. But I don't know. But that being said, man, is there anything y'all want to talk about? We could talk about anything else before we jump off the live. I've been on here almost 2 hours. And by the way, Crawford is actually posting videos now that he won the that he and Spence are fighting. So Crawford's posting videos that they're fighting. Spence is posting videos that they're fighting. So it's on. And something else when it comes to Devin Haney and Lomachenko is Shakur Stevenson first said he thought Loma got robbed. Now he's saying Devin Haney won the fight. Tim Bradley was saying he felt Lomachenko got robbed. Now he's saying he feels that Devin Haney won the fight. So you can see a lot of people who initially felt Devin Haney lost, now they're saying they felt that he won. And I think that's the right thing to do, is to go back and rewatch the fight to try to be as fair as possible, man. But we're going to see. 818 says, Paulie is mad at black people because Broner took his belt and his broad. I posted something the other day where I said the way Paulie is now is how Paulie's always been. And what I mean is, if he does have any hate inside of him, that's something that's always been there. You know what I mean? So it's just bad that a guy like him, it just has this platform to where he can come out and just, say all kind of ridiculous stuff, man, and create divide across the boxing community. Because that's ridiculous. But there's a lot of content creators who do that bull crap too, man. And I just don't think it's cool for anybody to do that, man. Hey, I think, what's his name? Boots Ennis is fighting on July 30th, man. July 30th, man, and Boots Ennis is going to be fighting. So it is what it is. You're going to be back fighting. But is there anything else y'all want to talk about before I jump off the live? We could talk about anything. Anything y'all want to talk about, we could talk about before we jump off of here. Talked about a whole lot, man. So we'll see. Regis Prograis fighting the 17th of June in New Orleans. All kind of crap going on. All right, anything else y'all want to talk about? Throw it at me. I got about 2 minutes, then I'm going to jump off the live. Talk about anything y'all want to talk about. It doesn't even have to be boxing related. After I get off of here, I'm gonna go jogging and go exercise. So if there's anything you want to talk about, let me know. Tanya Root. Very sensible and informed live. I've subscribed. Oh, thank you so much, Tanya. I appreciate it, man, and I'm really glad you enjoyed the live. A lot of times I'll go live and I'll turn on my camera and try to be as interactive as possible, man. But I really appreciate you participating and supporting the channel. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Make sure you eat something good, too. And y'all keep safe. I got about another minute for anybody who wants to talk about anything. I'll hang around. But after a minute, I got to go. Oh, O'Shaquie Foster. I don't know why people are talking more about O'Shaquie Foster at 1:30, man. O'Shaquie Foster is a monster. Look like he's going to be back in the ring soon, man. So look. Oh, okay, yeah. So I'm telling you, man, things are going to start opening up, man. These fights are starting to be made. It's going to start opening up now. Going to start seeing everybody fighting, especially at 147. Going to start seeing everybody fighting again, man. And I can't wait. I actually can't wait, man. So let's see. Got anything else I want to talk to y'all about? I think I'm good. All right. That being said, y'all keep cool. Shout out to the veterans, all 7 continents. Y'all eat something good. Get some rest. and I'm in the breeze.